Welcome to the Forbes India Budget 2023 special discussion. The Finance Minister, Madam Sitaraman, has used all the right buzzwords which the public wanted her to do. A higher Capex allocation, fiscal deficit prudence, SOPs for the middle class, personal tax regime tinkered, and also, not leaving aside the MSME agri sectors. It obviously had a very, very clear impact on the stock markets, which cheered a lot. The Sensex was up about 1,100 points at its peak, has fallen off a bit. But to try and understand the fine print and to help us really understand what has the FM tried to do, are we back on that very clear growth path for FY24 in a scenario where the global recession is still looming? To help us understand this, we have two distinguished guests. We have Ambareesh Baliga, an independent market analyst. Hi, Ambareesh. And we have Alok Agrawal, partner with Deloitte India. Hi, Alok. Welcome.
Ambareesh, I'd like to start with you. As Salil said, the finance minister has used all the right buzzwords. There's tax relief for the middle class, there's fiscal prudence, etc., etc. There's something in it for everyone. And the markets have reacted positively. From a market lens, have they got what they wanted?
Expected by the markets basically for the middle class, for the rural section, for the infra. I mean, the sort of expenditure which they're doing is higher than what we had expected. Defense expenditure also has gone up. But at the same time, there was a fear that they may tinker with the capital gains, and that did not happen. So I think that's the reason we saw that major boost in the market just post-budget. But anyway, the markets have come off post that. I would say that this was a decent budget, but this is surely not a dream budget, but it's a decent budget as per expectations.
Alok?
Sure. So it was widely expected that the government is going to try and make the new tax regime more attractive. And that is what they have done, certainly. At both ends of the spectrum, there is a good change. So income up to 7 lakhs per annum, no tax. The rebate which exists under Section 87A has been increased to ensure that. So that is one relief at the lower end. And at the higher end, India had attracted a lot of headlines, perhaps not for the best reasons, by having a top rate of 42.7% odd for income exceeding 50 million rupees or 5 crore rupees per annum. And there again, they have reduced the surcharge to 25%, thereby bringing the effective rate down from 42.7 to around 39%. So again, for the high income earners, that is very good news, because they anyway may not care much about some of the exemptions and deductions that are available under the old regime. So I would say the new regime has certainly become more attractive. And again, in between these two extremes also, they have reduced the slabs by widening it. Instead of 2.5 lakhs per income slab, they've increased it to 3 lakhs. So especially, let's say at the 12.5 to 15 lakh rupees per annum slab, you have a reduction of the rate applicable from 25% as it existed earlier to 20% now. So all in all, we will certainly see many more taxpayers now moving to the new tax regime, which is what the government wanted all along. And they've also kind of sent a message, while at this point it's more procedural, that the new regime will be the default regime, and you actually will perhaps need to apply. We'll need to look at the fine print, but you'll need to apply to opt for the old regime. So that kind of puts the onus on the taxpayer to consciously elect for the old regime. And if he doesn't do that, by default, it will be the new regime that applies. So that's another, subtle change in order to move people to the new regime.
So, Ambareesh, I wanted to bring you in once again. We have the global economy slowing, and we also have a situation where uh, a lot could go wrong during the course of the year. Although people are also talking about a lot that could go right. But let's assume that things don't work out and the tax projections don't work out. The government needs to spend more on additional areas like food, fertilizer subsidy, etc. Is there enough sort of leeway for that? I know it's very early in the day and people still have to read the fine print, but is there any does Ms. Sitaraman give us enough leeway for that?
No, because I mean, I don't see any reason as to why we should really slow down majorly. Because I mean, the amount of capital outlay which has been there for the infra as well as the railways, I think it's a record as of now. I think the outlay for infra has gone up by nearly 33%. So I don't think there should be any fear of a major slowdown. I think we could, looking at the global economy, possibly we could be hit a bit, but I suppose we would be the best performing economy if you're talking of 12 months or 15 months down the line. I think we should be the best performing economy as compared to the others. So I don't think we should really fear, much on that front. I mean, clearly looking at the intent of the government on spending that on the space.
And a quick follow up to that, this whole new tax regime, this is for both of you, this whole new tax regime, exemptions go. So that in many ways sort of reduces the incentive to save, that much may not come into the ALSS route. People might stop. I mean, there's some fine print on insurance policies where I think premiums above 5 lakhs will not be tax exempt, etc., etc. It reduces the incentive to save, and we've seen insurance stocks come off. So I wanted your thoughts on that as to while the new tax regime saves you money, but it also kind of reduces the incentive to save. Any thoughts on that? Either if you could take that.
So if you just repeat that.
Right. No, I just had a question on the new tax regime. So while it's good for individuals, your tax rates come down, etc., but it also reduces the incentive to save. And so maybe your ELSS contributions go down, etc. I'm just wondering, is that a bad outcome where the incentive to save comes down?
Yeah, I would say that's a bit of a negative as far as this budget is concerned, because clearly, it's just not a nudge. People, I think the government is pushing people to the new tax regime, which also means that your tax saving instruments will be more or less redundant, and the amount of saving which was happening, because if you look at Indians, our saving was basically fixed deposits. It's only now in the last couple of years that people have started looking at other instruments, and the percentage of equity investment has in fact gone up to a certain extent. But I think because of this, that ELSS and rest of the tax saving instruments will, I think, possibly become redundant. So that's one negative, because that was that was a forced saving which Indians were doing. And if you're talking of insurance, yes, I think the policies of 5 lakhs plus, I think where premiums are, I think more than 5 lakhs, I think that will get really hit. And because of which we have seen that most of the life insurance companies' stocks have taken a beating today. And I think the other change which has happened is market-linked debentures, where they will not be getting that preferential taxation like equity, and I suppose that is what has hit a couple of the wealth management companies today.
Right.
Alok, same question.
Sure. So, in the last few years, we've seen a huge amount of retail investment into the mutual fund space through SIPs, etc. So perhaps there is no kind of impact on that from the budget changes. As far as not incentivizing taxpayers who are under the old regime, they perhaps will need to look at whether it makes sense for them to continue under the old or the new regime. But I personally don't believe that this particular change or lack of change would cause a big impact on the retail investments. But I'm not a finance expert here.
Ambareesh, this one's for you. So the big event is over.
Right.
This goes back to FOMC and earnings. Which how would you evaluate the Q3 earnings which went, and now going ahead? What's the next trigger for the market?
No, I don't think there's any major, positive trigger for the markets from here on. And typically, what we have also seen in the past couple of years is the effect of budget doesn't last for more than a day or two. So basically, it's become more of a non-event. Budgets overall have become non-events in the last couple of years. So I really don't see the markets moving either ways because of the budget. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 days, I think the effect is more or less done. FMC meeting, possibly we could be looking at another 25 bips. May not be 50, maybe more towards 25. And when we're talking of earnings, the way I see it is it's more of a mixed bag, slightly lower than what most of us were expecting. And I see this possibly continuing into Q4 too. And because of which, I have been a bit cautious in the markets looking at the valuations. But like I said earlier, if you're talking of the next 12 to 15 months, we should be among the better performing economies across the globe. So based on that, we'll again see the flows coming back, but may not be in the next 1 or 2 quarters. So we could see a bit of a slowdown. We could see some sort of a time correction over the next 5 to 6 months. But post that, I think Indian markets would be something to look at.
Ambareesh, just a quick follow-up on that. You said that earnings haven't been as good as what you were expecting. So my question is, what is your Nifty EPS for FY23 and FY24? Just so that readers understand how far off we are. Listeners understand how far off we are.
I don't have that figure available with me right away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But then, the way I see is we should see a correction of at least the next, possibly 5 to 8% sort of a correction from these levels, which means I'm looking at Nifty between 16,500 to 17,000 is where possibly it becomes worthwhile to invest.
Okay, and in what time period are you expecting the correction?
This should happen, like I said, possibly over the next 4 to 6 months.
Right.
So it would be more of a time-wise correction than anything else, because I'm not talking of a very sharp sort of a cut from here. Because unless there's a major negative event, I don't see a big cut. Possibly, one of those things could have been in case the budget had disappointed so much that the sentiment itself is a bit shaky, and then you have a very bad budget. That could have possibly taken it down some more. But then looking at the way the budget has been, that will not have too much of an effect on the market.
So, Ambareesh, still going with you. There was a discussion in the newsroom. You have seen in the previous few days news surrounding, a large corporate group.
Right.
There were headwinds around that. If it's a market leader and those stocks have fallen,
right.
Would they ever be able to come back to their glory days? Because it's been quite a bit of correction across some of those groups.
I suppose it will take a very long time for them to come back. Because that was more of a bombshell. The report which came out was more of a bombshell, where no one was really questioning what they've been doing. But now I think every other person has their doubt in their mind as to what's been going wrong out there. So it will mean a lot of explanation coming from them from time to time, and to build that trust and faith back normally is an uphill task. So it will take a while. But one thing is, you really can't ignore them, because I mean, the sort of sectors they are in. And again, when you talk of the report, I don't think that report has ever questioned the business prospects or the sectoral prospects for the group companies. It was more on the rest of the issues which are there, which is outside possibly the company. The way they have gone about handling the equity movement and whatever they have done overseas. So, I really don't see too much of an issue as far as the business front is concerned. I think it is basically the management has to again come and build that trust back, which I think will take a while.
Question for Alok here. Alok, we spoke about the fact that the finance minister spoke about the fact that she wants to get capital expenditure up to 3.1% of GDP, and that rises from 1.7% when this government took over in 2014. Of course, that's significant, but I'm just wondering as to, the government has been spending all this on Capex, but private investments haven't been coming in. Any sense on when the private investment cycle would kick in? Are you getting any sense of that at all?
No, honestly, from an individual tax standpoint, I can't see any provisions that would be kind of connected to this, but maybe Ambareesh could, comment on this.
No, it was not very clear to me. If you can just repeat that.
Right. Yeah, right. So I was asking you that the finance minister spoke about the fact that this government would take capital expenditure to 3.1% of GDP in the next fiscal year, and they've steadily raising. The government has steadily been spending more on Capex. I think it was 1.7% in FY14 when the government took over, and but they keep talking about crowding in private investment, but we've seen that the Capex cycle from the private sector hasn't really kicked in, and so I wanted to ask you, do you get any sense at all that companies are willing to sort of start spending now, or it's just too early? It hasn't happened for the last 8 years. Do you get any sense at all in your conversation?
That's true, because typically the private sector spending lags the public spending, no doubt. But the wait has been a bit too long, and again, one can always blame that on the sort of issues which we had in between, for example, COVID, which actually put everything off track. So maybe I think we should give them at least another possibly 12 months to 18 months for the private capital cycle to restart in a big way. Although we have seen some sort of a movement, but I think it will take a while longer.
A question open to both of you, Ambareesh and Alok. We both of you have spoken about the hits that we've seen so far. Any misses in the budget? How do you see it? What could have come? What should have come?
Misses. I would again talk of the taxation, the personal taxation. I think they should have treated both. They should have actually given a choice to people as to what they want to choose, not really push them to the new regime. Because, like I said, this will clearly affect the savings, the forced savings of Indians. Because still there are a lot of people who are still not doing your mutual fund investment or equity investment or other sort of savings on their own. They've been doing this because of the tax saving instruments which are there. So if you're forcing them out, I think that will affect us to a certain extent.
Alok?
Yeah, so the point here is that, if there is an old tax regime that exists, then you need to look at whether it makes sense for the taxpayers who are in it, even if you don't want to provide further incentives under that regime and make it more attractive, but at least to ensure that it does make sense. So here there was a lot of, case for relooking at some of the limits, because if you look at the inflation rates, which are prescribed by the government authority, by the tax authorities themselves, let's say for calculating capital gains tax, many of the limits, for example, ATC deduction of 1.5 lakhs or the 2 lakh deduction for interest on housing loans for haven't been reviewed since the 2014 budget. So I agree with Ambareesh that, in a sense, what is happening here is by not rationalizing some of these limits, you are making it less rational for taxpayers to continue under this regime. But honestly, that was something which was one of the expectations, that given the fact that they've introduced the new regime so recently, they would rather look at making that more attractive, and consequentially the old regime less attractive. So I think the intention is very clear. How that pans out on the retail investment remains to be seen. But from a salary taxpayer perspective, I definitely see many more now willing to move to the new regime.
Alok, what does it mean when they say that the new regime is a default regime? Because even earlier you could actually choose. So now it's just a question of you choosing the old regime, right? Is that what it means? Because you could always choose, right?
That's right. But, it's kind of putting the onus on the taxpayers to consciously choose for the old one. So I would say it's, symbolic, but it's perhaps a step in the transition from migrating to only a new regime in the future. So that seems to be the kind of intent behind that change.
Right. But it's literally just a click to choose, right? I mean, between
That's
the
right.
one. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because at least for salary taxpayers, you can switch every year between the new and the old one. There are no restrictions, and that aspect doesn't seem to have changed. So yes, it's more symbolic and process.
Right. And this is a question for both of you, but more for Alok. I think, a lot of taxpayers get caught up in litigation, and she spoke about the fact that scrutiny would be reduced, or the threshold for picking cases for scrutiny would be increased, etc., etc. But just on a broad level, these tax reforms that have been carried out over the years to make things simpler for individual taxpayers, what's your sense? Have they worked? And I mean, Ambareesh, I know in the markets, a lot of people have got into this thing where income from long-term capital gains is taxed as trading income, and your marginal tax rate is put, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering, have things gotten easier over the years? The question.
From whatever I have heard from my clients who've got those calls, that it's still as difficult, if not more. Dealing with the tax authorities, so their things haven't really become that much simpler.
It's still a hassle.
Yes, absolutely.
Alok?
So from a policy and direction standpoint, the changes are very progressive, because I'm sure there were a lot of taxpayers who faced challenges in dealing with tax authorities in person. For example, if I talk about the faceless scheme, so these policies are progressive from a long-term perspective, but there have been implementation challenges along the way. And the FM did mention that the grievance redressal system will be strengthened. So, for example, in our experience, individuals who have, let's say, claims for foreign tax credits where they have income from overseas, many of these individuals automatically get tax adjustments even without any opportunity of representing their claims, and then they have to go through the process to get their get their point of view across. So we are hoping that some of these things will be improved. Otherwise, some of these taxpayers actually need to go under the grievance schemes which are currently there in order to escalate the matter within the tax authorities and then get it resolved. So they need to look at some of these situations where there's a lot of tax adjustments being made by the authorities by default, and see whether those are really required, because it's an unnecessary hassle for the taxpayer. So hopefully whatever changes are being planned, I haven't gone through some of the changes in the finance bill on that front, if there are any. But going by the FM's announcement, we need to see whether those will help in addressing the issues faced by the taxpayers.
Ambareesh, coming back to you, the capital gains thing now it gets pushed back by 1 more year. What happens? What do you think?
Pushed back by possibly 1 more year in the minds of the investors, because this will always keep coming up. But I mean, I don't think the government should even think of tinkering with the capital gains, because see, I mean, as of now, it doesn't make sense in really disturbing the apple cart, because I mean, whatever earnings from capital gains as well as other taxes which are there, I mean, STT and the rest of it, I think the collections have been good, and the sentiment in the market also has been decent. I mean, although we are talking of a correction, but we are not talking of the sentiment really going bad. So I don't think any government should think in terms of disturbing this apple cart. I mean, it should continue as it is, because see, when we had introduced STT in 2004, it was clear that there will not be long-term capital gains tax, and your short-term capital gains tax was lower. All that was changed. We again brought in the long-term capital gains tax, and STT still continues. But I think beyond this should not really look to kill the golden goose.
Okay, great. So we've seen what Madam Sitaraman had to do. 1 more year goes, and now we get into a critical phase, which is closer to the election year in 2024. Of course, the markets have a lot more issues to grapple with: inflation, corporate earnings. We have to see whether private Capex will actually kick off in a better way. But thanks again, Ambareesh and Alok, for helping us decipher the budget and really moving into the fine print. Thank you very much once again for joining us for this special edition of Forbes India Budget 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.